Good afternoon, everyone. This is TJ Muehleman with Standard Co. with a new edition of our data series, Data in the Wild. It's been a couple weeks since I last recorded one. I'm sorry. I know you've missed me, but we've been crazy busy with the end of the year, making cookies, talking to Santa, doing data stuff in that order. But today I want to talk a little bit about something we're going to talk more about in 2022, and it is data experience. Why it's important, what it means, and what we're going to talk about in the next 12 months. So most of you who are watching this are probably familiar with the siblings customer experience and user experience. User experience is probably the one you've heard of most. It's been around longer. And user experience is this concept of what is it like to interact with a piece of software. It's not just user interface, which are the buttons and the colors and the way you structured the page, but it's how it feels to use a platform, how it interacts, what the storytelling components are of it. And user experience is something that's incredibly important to building software, to making sure it's usable and a pleasant experience to the end user. And about 5, maybe 10 years ago, a new sibling to user experience came along called customer experience. Now, this is something that's been around for a long time, but it got a new name and a new label and kind of fancy terminology. And customer experience encompasses the journey a person goes through with an organization. What is it like to onboard? What is it like to interact with the brand on a website? What is the advertising like? What is it like to escalate a technical support issue? It's the entire sort of life cycle of a customer within an organization. And I really like these two concepts because what they do is they bring a human touch to interacting with a software company. And that's something that at Standard Co. we take really seriously. We're really engaged around the human touch of interacting with software. Now, we would like to postulate. I don't know if that's the right word. We would like to bring forth a new concept, a new experience called data experience. Okay, so what we're finding, and we've now built data systems all over the world for the largest organizations in the world, the smallest organizations in the world. And one thing that is sort of overlooked in this kind of paradigm of experience is what is it like to interact with the data? Data has sort of this clinical kind of feel to it. It's ones and zeros. It's yes or no. It's where does somebody live? It's very kind of factual, which it in fact is. But what we're overlooking is that data can also tell a story. Data can also bring about a feeling of what is the data telling us. And so along those lines, we've kind of started to create this new paradigm where data experience cohabitates with customer experience and user experience. So for example, you can see I've kind of taken that previous chart and added this data experience, and on purpose I had it slightly overlap user experience because there are some similarities between the two. And data experience, now this is by no means a comprehensive list, but data experience encompasses where did the data come from? What tools are we going to use? So is that Power BI or Tableau or Metabase, which is our favorite? How clean is the data? Again, something you've been hearing a lot more of in the concept of COVID, meaning is the data ready to be used for analysis? What's the definition of the data? You're looking at a lot of data indicators and you may not know what those mean. So are they clearly defined? What visualization are you going to use, if any? And how accessible is the data, right? And that's both in accessibility. Is it accessible for people who might have disabilities, who might have trouble seeing or hearing? But also, is the data transparent? Has it been made available to other people? And this is something we'll talk about in our next edition of why data transparency is so critical. So we've created these things, this new concept of data experience. And again, we overlapped it with user experience because there are aspects, namely in visualization, where there's similarities between the two experiences. But let me kind of walk you through a very quick kind of example of what we get. Most of our customers, when they come to us, they sort of leapfrog a few of the data experience steps, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. And they just hand us data. They're like, here's data, go figure something out with this data. And we're like, well, that's great. And this is an example of some data. This is actually COVID data. And we're like, well, what story are you trying to tell? What are you trying to understand? And they'll take a step back and say, but I have the data. And it's like, okay, it's sort of like having all the parts to a car that are all strewn out in front of you, but not knowing what you're trying to build. You might think you're supposed to build a washing machine. Maybe you're supposed to build a truck. But you got to start with a blueprint of where you want to, what problems are you trying to solve before you can actually go start making usage of the data. So along those lines, we've created this really basic framework that, again, is a work in progress. So check back with me in a couple months, and maybe this will be a little bit more fleshed out. But what we do with our clients, and this is, again, born more out of our experience with customers, we start with, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your fundamental goals? Instead of starting with the data, start with, what is it you're trying to answer? Maybe you're trying to understand where COVID is going to happen next, or maybe you're trying to understand how people in your cohort are doing if you're tracking people. There's a lot of things you might be doing that you want to understand, but you got to distill it down to some basic ideas, some basic questions first. Second, then you say, well, what data do I need to answer those questions? Okay, because you, again, might have a pile of data, but it might not be the right pile. If I'm going back to COVID and I'm trying to understand where COVID's going to happen next, I might have a pile of influenza data that might be sort of interesting, but not necessarily instructive for COVID. So we kind of go to that question next. The third question is, okay, where do I get that data? Do I already have it? Maybe I do. Maybe I have a spreadsheet. Maybe I need to go out and collect it. Again, using tools like Standard Data, our tool set for data collection. Then I got to go out and get the data. And then and there's a whole bunch of things that happen next. But then the fourth and final question is, how do I present that data? What do I do? Is it a data visualization? Is it a simple report? Is it a website? Is it a dashboard? Data can be presented in a multitude of ways. And I think we race towards displaying something very sexy and very cool without really thinking, is this actually telling the story I wanted to tell? So we think of data experience as these four kind of pillars of again, what is it you're trying to solve? What data would I need to solve that problem? Where do I get that data? And then how do I present that data? And if you think about it in those terms, in that context, then your data project will become a hell of a lot easier and a lot more straightforward. So hopefully you found this interesting. Next year, we'll talk more about this along with a lot of the other cool data stuff we're doing. And this is probably the last video of 2021. Hopefully we end on a high note, and hopefully everybody has a lovely holiday and a happy new year. Thank you so much.